This is Derek Chamblee, broadcasting from Chamblee, Atlanta, the next great American city, Battleground Zero, the epicenter of the 2017 civil defense of the United States of America, broadcasting from an undisclosed location. It's winding up on 4:30 in the morning, June 27th. 2017, and we're following up on the breaking news, and we've got something for you tonight. It's the most explosive story, a bombshell, a sordid tale that goes all the way back to, well, anyway, goes a long way back. CYBERCYRCLETYME. Goes all the way back to the time that Prescott Bush was funding the financial rise of Adolf Hitler in Germany, rearming Germany. Prescott Bush. And in the 1930s, through banks in France and England, financed the financial rise of Adolf Hitler. They had finally found someone to be their mouthpiece, their orator, Adolf Hitler. And Adolf Hitler came with great speeches. Adolf Hitler spoke about the new economic world order funded through associates of Prescott Bush, the father of George Herbert Walker Bush and the grandfather of George W. Bush and Jeb Bush. Yes, and Prescott Bush and his associates rearmed Germany. They dealt arms to Adolf Hitler until 1943, even after in 1942, an act of Congress, Aid to the Enemy Act, cut them off. And later, in 1946, Prescott Bush made Richard Nixon, in his first campaign out of California for Congress. So the story goes way back. And then, in 1971, Richard Nixon promoted George Herbert Walker Bush to become UN ambassador. And in one of his first speeches, George Herbert Walker Bush spoke about the New World Order. Later, in 1973, Richard Nixon promoted George Herbert Walker Bush to the head of the Republican National Committee. And he flew around the country, George Herbert Walker Bush, and said Richard Nixon knew nothing about Watergate. The story goes way back. And when Richard Nixon opened up China, he sent the whole Bush family, George Herbert Walker Bush, Jeb Bush, George W. Bush, Barbara, the whole Bush family to China to be the first envoy to China. The story goes way back. And when former President Richard Nixon was engulfed in the Watergate scandal, George Herbert Walker Bush and the Bush family were safely tucked away in China. But when they came back, Gerald Ford, made George Herbert Walker Bush the director of the CIA. So the story goes way back. We don't have time to get into the whole story, so we'll fast forward to June 27th, 2017, and the selection of Robert Mueller as special counsel to investigate any kind of collaboration between our current president, Donald Trump's campaign, and V. Putin of Russia. Wow. President Donald Trump will not fire Robert Mueller. Robert Mueller was selected in July of 2001 by former President George W. Bush He had some illness at the time, so he didn't assume the directorship of the FBI until several days before the 9/11 attack. But prior to that, in December of 2000, we'll back up. 3 of the 4 lead pilots and their movements were spotted by eyewitnesses in the city of Tampa. And the story they had at that time was they were training to be commercial pilots. One was an Egyptian. His father was rich. Turned out that was Muhammad Atta. The rest were Saudis. And they were in Florida by way of an arrangement by George Herbert Walker Bush when he made a deal with Saudi Arabia to deal them sophisticated aircraft. He made a deal to let young Saudis come to the United States of America to train as pilots. 9/11 was supposed to occur during the Clinton administration, but it took them time to get the whole plan together. Prior to September 11th, sometime in 2001, President George W. Bush prepared in the back channels for what would become known as the Patriot Act and ordered Condoleezza Rice, Secretary of State, to prepare for these things, and all the other departments in Homeland Security, the NSA, the CIA, and even the FBI, to prepare by September 10th, all the things to take absolute power. And in September, as governor of Texas, George W. Bush was running in the 2000 election as the Republican nominee. He went to Tampa and met with the Sunni Muslims from a mosque in North Tampa that were supporting a USF professor who had been jailed on secret evidence, Al Arian, and George W. Bush assured them that he would not use secret evidence against the Sunni Muslims. And it was the same, like a soft cell, operating out of the mosque in North Tampa that hosted the movements of at least 3 or out of the 4 lead pilots through the city of Tampa. And in December 2000, all the way to July 2001, they had movements through the city of Tampa after they did their training in fields south of the Tampa Bay region in Sarasota and Venice. And those movements were tracked very closely by a special unit of the FBI. And those movements were aided and hosted domestically by the soft cell mosque out of North Tampa, which is well known not only to Homeland Security Central Command out of MacDill Air Force Base in Tampa, but is known by the Tampa Police Criminal Intelligence Bureau and Mayor Bob Buckhorn, that collaborated with them. And at any rate, Special Counsel Robert Mueller, after the 9/11 attack, on the basis of Homeland Security, National Security, NSA, CIA secrets, and involvement by the President George W. Bush and his brother, Governor of Florida, Jeb Bush, withheld that information from the 9/11 Commission and the 9/11 Commissioners, including Florida U.S. Senator Bob Graham, who to this day says, these guys, these Saudis, these hijackers, Mohammed Atta from Egypt, his father's rich, they're training to be commercial pilots. Oh, really? They let you guys do that kind of thing? Lots of eyewitnesses that were interviewed by the FBI after the 9/11 attacks. All of the interviews are classified now, withheld, under the direction of former FBI Director Robert Mueller, withheld from the 9/11 commissioners. And it's a sordid story. It's a bombshell. The origin of the hacking, the leaks, the vote flipping in Florida and Wisconsin that gave our current president, Donald Trump, the 2016 electoral votes from Florida and Wisconsin in the Electoral College, that gave him the victory in the Electoral College when really it was H. Clinton that won. And it's the anti-Trump Republicans that were the source, that were in the beginning never Clinton, that became never Trump, that became never Clinton again. And our current president just did what you'd expect him to do. He made a great deal. Vice President Mike Pence knows all about it. Wisconsin Speaker of the House Paul Ryan, Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker, Marco Rubio, U.S. Senator from Florida, Jeb Bush, Red Team Hackers, ENTELINTER, BBC, Red Team Hackers, Jeb Bush, Red Team Hackers. This is DEREKH Chamblee, broadcasting from Chamblee, Atlanta, the next great American city, Battleground Zero, the epicenter of the 2017 civil defense of the United States of America. Thank you very much.